my water just broke. I felt like things really intensified.
She was right there and she was coming.
It was an amazing feeling.
I'm gonna cry just thinking about it. I could feel her head.
We heard her cry. We were squeezing hands and she was screaming.
I'm Bryn Hunt Palmer, and you're listening to The Birth Hour. This podcast is designed as a safe place to come together and share childbirth stories. Stick around and join us to hear informative and empowering birth journeys from all over the world. This episode is in partnership with Motif Medical. Motif designs insurance-eligible products for busy moms. With a focus on innovation and empowerment, Motif's line of breast pumps and maternity compression garments are sophisticated yet discreet and made to support mothers as they navigate new motherhood. Discover why moms are reporting more milk in less time with the Luna breast pump and see how you can get it covered through insurance at motifmedical.com/birthhour. You'll also see their other products there like the Aura Glow, which is their new wearable pump that I discussed at the end of this episode with lactation consultant Jackie. We talk about what makes this wearable unique and how it compares to the Luna, and it's really just a great conversation, so be sure to listen to that at the end of this episode. Before we get to today's birth story, I want to talk a little bit about our online childbirth course. It's called Know Your Options, and this is the course you've been looking for if you just have that gut feeling that you know you should be taking a childbirth course, but maybe the one that's being offered to you by your care provider is not exactly what you're looking for. It might be more catered towards the type of birth they want you to have versus making you informed of all your different options and how to address different things that happen in birth, because as this podcast has shown us, birth is very unpredictable. So we would love to have you check out our 12-module course. You can go to thebirthhour.com/course to see detailed outlines of what is included in the course. You will also get a bonus course called Beyond the First Latch that is an additional 6 modules all about pumping, feeding your baby, going back to paid work if that's part of your plan. And we have a special coupon code for you. It's 100OFF for $100 off enrollment. Again, that's thebirthhour.com/course. Another great way to support the Birth Hour and get more involved in the community is to join our Patreon. You can do this by going to patreon.com/birthhour, and you pledge $5 or more a month, and you get perks like access to our archived episodes. We have over 800 episodes in the archives now that are not available in the main podcast feed. You also get access to our private Facebook group, which is a great place to find support and community, as well as searching the archives there. There's been so many great discussions, and you can just pop a question into the search bar and you'll find some great answers to things that have already been asked. The last thing that we offer to our Patreon members is monthly Zoom calls, which is a really great, intimate way to connect with other Birth Hour listeners and me each month. Your support means so much to me. There's a few different ways to do it. You can do a gift membership, send that link to someone who needs a gift idea for you, or you can do an annual membership, which basically gets you like 2 months free. This support means so much to me and really, truly keeps the lights on here at the Birth Hour, because with more podcast networks emerging, it's becoming a little more challenging as an independent podcaster to keep things going. So our Patreon supporters are a huge part of that, and I'm really grateful to each and every one of you. So again, you can go to patreon.com/birthhour to get started with that. Today's birth story guest is Savvy, and she had a hospital birth. It was her first birth, and it was an unmedicated birth. All right, let's hear from Savvy. Hi, Savvy. Welcome to the Birth Hour. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Hi, Bryn. Thank you so much for having me. I am just honored to be able to share my story on here. I listened to episodes prepping for my own birth, and it's just really cool that I get to be on the other side of it talking about my own.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to get to your story. But before we do that, can you tell listeners a little bit about you and your family?
Of course. So yeah, my name is Savvy. I'm from Utah, but I ended up giving birth in the Bay Area, California. My husband and I moved out here for work, and upon moving, we got pregnant. So I spent my pregnancy here and was super grateful to have such a positive birth experience in California.
Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and talk about how your pregnancy went and then the preparation you did for your birth.
Yeah. So like I said, I am a first-time mom. This was my first pregnancy, and so you don't really know what to expect. And I was one of those people that unfortunately was really sick the first half of pregnancy. You know, you kind of hear the stories about how your mom's pregnancies were. And one thing that I learned is we're not always the same as our mom. And lucky for me, my mom was sick the entire time of being pregnant with me. And so I kind of had prepared myself that might be my story too. But at about the halfway mark, I turned a corner, and I was seriously so grateful, honestly, for the challenge at the beginning, because it made the second half of my pregnancy so much more smooth. I was so grateful every day to be able to have more energy, to be able to work out. I had a stronger appetite, which was really nice. And I was really able to enjoy the last half of my pregnancy and prepare for birth, which was really important to me ever since finding out that I was pregnant. When it came to birth, I really felt drawn to an unmedicated birth. But with this being my first pregnancy, I'm not going to lie, I felt a little bit crazy for thinking that, because it was, something I had never been through before, but it was something that was really appealing to me. And where I kind of started was, why was this something that I was, drawn to? And for me, I just really thought about like my personality and how I cope with things that are difficult. And when I thought about that, I really wanted to be able to move through labor. Movement was just a really big thing that drew me to going unmedicated, and not having an epidural was that I wanted to be able to move. Another thing is I just really wanted to be present in my birth, and just control the things that I did have control over. And so that's kind of what set the tone for my birth prep. It was all rooted in kind of those two things. And where I started was I took a birth course that was really helpful for me. I think a lot of first-time moms, we just don't know what we're getting into. And I think that we have a lot more control over our experience than we think, especially with the right education and with the right tools and the right preparation. And so again, for my personality, I knew that I really wanted to be educated. I wanted to feel prepared, and I really wanted to be empowered by my birth. That was something that was really important to me. And so the birth course really did help set that tone of just like educating me on things that I didn't know about, even just the stages of labor. I think it's so important to kind of just be in the know of what's happening throughout labor, and just that process of your body and your mind and your baby all working together to make birth happen. It really is so amazing. And my partner and I, my husband Kasdan and me, we really enjoy just preparing together and doing this birth course together. And through that, I did a lot of preparation on my mindset. Some of the things that really helped were fear clearing. And when it came to fears at the beginning, I would just kind of like push away my fears. If there was something that I was afraid of, I'd be like, nope, like I'm staying in a positive mindset. I do not want to pay any mind to what my fears were. But something that was really helpful for me, especially as I got later on in my pregnancy, was talking through my fears and facing those fears and being educated on the tools that I had that could help in those cases. And that really helped me to be able to really like process through the things that I was feeling afraid. And another thing that really helped was meditation, visualizations, and positive affirmations. And all of those just really got me in a positive mindset to be able to cope when things got really hard. I loved hearing positive stories and believing little by little that I really could have a positive birth experience. That's another reason why I love this podcast, is because hearing different stories really make you believe that, your story is going to be unique to you. And there was a point in my prep where I felt like I had done everything that I could to prepare. And I still was just I kind of was worried about the unknown, but I had this really cool realization that every birth story that I hear is unique. And I just knew that no matter what happened in mine, that it would be unique to me and that it would be special. And so I really appreciated just like hearing positive experiences and providing my mind with positive affirmations and positive visualizations of how it could go. I also worked with a doula, And my favorite things that she said was, like I said, I prepared for every scenario that could happen. And then I, talked through all the things that could go wrong. But a couple weeks before I gave birth, she said, you need to put equally as the same amount of effort and preparation into what could go right. Because she's like, what if it goes exactly as you wanted it to? And what if it's a really great experience? And I loved that. And I wanted to share that with listeners because, I think that birth has the opportunity to be such a transformative experience and a life-changing experience. And so it's considering all the things that could go right. And especially at the end of it, you're walking away no matter what happens with a beautiful baby and with just a new identity as a mother, which is something to be proud of. Another thing that really helped in my prep was coping techniques, really doing my research and prep on what I was going to do in labor. So a few of those things were breath work. I practiced a lot of breathing techniques beforehand. And one of the things that helped me and my husband the most was 5 breaths. You can do anything for 5 breaths. And so we practiced counting through breaths. We just educated ourselves on the options, especially even in a hospital setting. You have access to a medicine ball, to a shower, to movement. And those were all things that I just wanted to practice beforehand so that when I was in the moment, laboring in the hospital or at home, that I had things to rely upon and that I had practiced and knew what to do. And then lastly, I just really visualized the stages of labor and how that could look for me. And of course, you don't know how it's going to go. And so through prepping for birth, I realized a lot about my personality. And I might be a little bit type A because I just really wanted to feel prepared and educated. But I was so grateful for that because I think it really did lend itself to me having a really positive birth experience.
Awesome. Yeah, it sounds like you definitely were the type of person, more information, the better. Well, let's go ahead and get into how labor started for you.
Yeah, so I think those last couple weeks of pregnancy can be such a mind game because you are really unsure about how things are going to go. Are you going to go to your due date? Are you going to go past your due date? And I think I got kind of in the mindset, I more so wanted to prepare for the possibility of going over my due date. So I kind of got it in my head that I was going to go over my due date. And the night before my due date, my water ended up breaking in the middle of the night. And that was a scenario that I did not really play out. I did not think that my water was going to break on its own. I had fully prepared to labor at home as long as I could. Another thing is that I tested positive for strep B. So part of my plan was that I was going to need to go into the hospital once my water broke to receive antibiotics. And so when my water broke at home, I didn't quite know what happened. It happened while I was sleeping. And I woke up and I wasn't quite sure. And so I called my doula and she was awake at 3:00 in the morning. She was so great and talked me through and she was like, yeah, your water broke. And I wasn't feeling any contractions. And so one of the things that I was a little nervous about was how I was going to labor at home and especially how I was going to cope on the drive to the hospital if I was in intense labor. And so just a funny piece was that I didn't end up having to really enact those coping techniques that I had put into place because I wasn't really feeling contractions quite yet. So my husband and I at 3:00 in the morning, we straightened up our apartment and we got the last of our things packed. We said a prayer together and we headed to the hospital. And it was really a special way to begin the whole experience because I was just really at peace and we were really enjoying our time. We were listening to music on the way to the hospital and the song That's My Baby by Justin Bieber had just come out. And so we were actually like hyping ourselves up listening to that song on the way. And I'll always remember my birth experience experience when I hear that song. And so it's really fun thing to remember back. And it's about, that's my baby. She's iconic. And it was a cool way to start out my experience. So we headed to the hospital and arrived early in the morning at about 5 a.m. And as a first time, you just don't know how things are going to go. And of course, in my mind, I was like, did I prepare enough? Did I do all the things that I wanted to do and needed to do? And am I ready for this? And now, I just am like, yeah, you did. It's hard because you have never been in that situation before. And I think that's natural for your mind to start racing of all the things that am I ready? Am I ready for this? But at that point, you're in it. And I was super grateful for just the way the whole day played out. I think, when it comes to creating a birth plan, when it comes to talking through your wants and wishes, I think it's cool to control what you can control about your experience, but really trusting that the rest of the story is going to be unique to you and it's going to be so special. And that's why I just love what my doula told me about really believing that my best case scenario could happen, because now I'm standing on the other side of it, seeing that it was such an incredible experience that I couldn't have ever really planned or prepared for. And so it's so cool to reflect back and just remember this special day, because I could have never planned it better myself,
Yeah. All right. So how did it progress from there?
Yeah. So like I said, I wasn't feeling contractions quite yet. So we got set up with the IV because I needed to receive antibiotics. We got all settled in our room, and one of my first nurses asked me if I had a birth plan. And one of the reasons why I got a doula was because I knew that she was somebody that knew what was important to me, knew the type of birth that I wanted to have, and I knew that she could advocate for that in the moments that maybe I couldn't. But what I learned was when they asked me for my birth plan, I gave it to them and they posted it on the wall in my hospital room. And so the nurse, we went through every single question on my birth plan, of everything from the type of environment that I wanted in my room to how I wanted to labor, to how I wanted to cope with pain, delivery, and postpartum. All of the wishes that I had, she went through all of the things that I had put. And I never had to speak on it again. Every nurse that came in was briefed on all of my wishes and all of the things that I did have control over. And I was so grateful for their support. And so when it comes to, preparing for your birth, and especially if you're a first-time mom, you do have control over those type of things. And I think for me, it was so cool to educate myself on the things that were important to me, and to feel confident in asking for them because they were able to support all of those wishes. And so it just really set the tone for the rest of my birth, just having that posted on the wall and knowing that they supported me in all of those things. And so right off the bat, I wasn't really having consistent contractions that I could feel. And so with my water having been already broken, and with, testing positive for Strep B, they were wanting to, I wasn't going to be leaving the hospital without having a baby. It was funny when my water broke and I called the hospital, I said, can I go back to sleep? Because I wasn't feeling anything. But they were like, no, you're going to have a baby. You're ready. So I came in and I realized shortly that I wasn't going to leave the hospital without my baby. And so while I wanted to really lean into the natural process of birth and really let things happen as naturally as they could, that was something that was really important to me, that was listed as one of my wishes on my birth plan when we were talking about how, to get labor moving along, because I was just chilling in the hospital room. We were trying to get rest, but you're so excited. And I hopped on a work call because that explains kind of where I was at. I was chilling and I hopped on a work call, and that was kind of funny. It was more so a joke more than anything, because we had joked throughout my pregnancy that I would hop on to a work call while I was in the hospital. And so I thought that would be a funny way to tell my team that it was happening. But as we kind of assessed the situation and we needed to get things moving along, we went with the least invasive form of just kind of getting things moving. So I did misoprostol, which is just a cervical ripener that was just a little nudge along, and my body responded really well to it. Something that was important to me was that my contractions would gradually increase so that I could cope as they continue to increase in intensity. And so that was something that I was grateful that my team supported and that we started with misoprostol. It was a great, just lower invasive way to get things going. And I just was able to continue to enjoy the day. My doula went and grabbed us lunch. And one thing that was really helpful for me was setting the tone in my hospital room before things ramped up. So a few of the things that were important to me of just setting the tone and setting the scene for the kind of birth that I wanted was I wanted to dim the lights. I wanted to play my own music. I had prepared with hypnobirthing tracks, and so that was something that I had playing. And I was very prepared with my plans for visitors in the hospital room. And when things got more intense, I wanted to really hone in, and I knew I would be very introspective and that I would be kind of just going into my zone and really focusing in on my breath. And so all of those things kind of helped set that tone of the kind of birth that I wanted, to be able to be in tune with my body, to be able to have a calm, peaceful environment. And that was really helpful for me to put that into place before things got more intense. So like I said, I went into the hospital around 6 a.m. We kind of were hanging out in the hospital throughout the day, and I did some prenatal yoga that I had practiced that helped me to just stay moving. And, we located the birth ball that I had done prep with. And then in the evening, my husband, he said, would you like to, one of the coping techniques that I had looked into was nitrous oxide. And I've heard some mixed opinions about nitrous oxide. Some people had said, it is super helpful. Some said it wasn't helpful. And so one thing that I wanted to do was try it before I was in the later stages of labor. And so my husband requested that maybe they bring it in and so I could try it before the later hours of the night. And so they brought it in, and it was when I started to feel more consistent contractions. I was getting to the point where I didn't necessarily want to have conversations with visitors. And so I wanted to try nitrous at this point, which for me was extremely helpful. Nitrous oxide is not a form of pain management. It really is just to relax, kind of help you relax and think about something else, like be able to distract your mind just a little bit from maybe the pain that you're feeling. And for me, up to that point, I was thinking about like, how far dilated am I? I had made the choice that I didn't want to receive cervical checks unless there was like a purpose behind it, because I wanted to be able to just really give into labor, surrender to what my body and my baby were doing. And part of that for me, I didn't want to gauge where I was at based on how dilated I was. And so I was really grateful that my team, they respected that, and they let me lead those requests and those conversations. And so I started doing nitrous when the contractions started to pick up. And I think that really helped me in my mind to be like, I don't care if I'm dilated to a 3. I don't care if I'm I don't care how dilated I am. I really just surrender to like, this is the type of birth I want. I want to be in a peaceful mindset. I want to be able to really focus in on my breath. And I think nitrous helped me establish my breath work. That was really helpful. So for me, I would say that it was really helpful for me, and it just kind of set the tone for the rest of my birth and helped me to surrender to the fact that like, at this point, you don't have any control over how fast or slow you dilate and how fast you move through the stages of labor. And so for me, it was like, okay, here we are, and I'm present in my birth. And that was something that was really important to me. So after that, it was about 10 p.m. And like I had mentioned before, I arrived at the hospital around 4 a.m. And so as the night went on, I was getting really tired. Like, I was doing really well with breathing. I requested a cervical check about 11 p.m. because I wanted to be able to assess where I was at, because I was starting to feel really just like physically tired, but I was still, my team was so great. They were like, you're coping really well. This doesn't seem like a pain problem. We just want you to be able to rest if you need to so that you can, because for me in my mind, I was thinking, how long, like you're always kind of like gauging and like keeping your energy tank, you're thinking,
Yeah.
where am I at? And do I have enough in the tank to like finish? Because I was going on almost 24 hours of being awake. And so at this point in the road, I was really grateful for my support, who knew what my values were and what was important to me, the things that were listed on my birth plan, that when I was expressing that I was feeling really tired, that they didn't go right to talking about the epidural, because that was something that was on my birth plan, was that I would bring that up if that was something that I was interested in. And so one of the options, and I bring this up because I don't think sometimes we are, in the know that there are other options that make it so you can continue to move around in labor. And that was something that was important to me. And so at this juncture, they brought up fentanyl. They said, this is a way that you can get a little bit of rest. It only lasts for about 20 minutes, and it isn't necessarily a huge help with the pain, but it helps you to be able to get a little bit of rest. And so that was something that we felt good about. So I received a dose of fentanyl, and it was able to, for 20 minutes, get me a little bit of rest. I was on the birth ball. I had really found a rhythm on the birth ball of swaying through contractions. My partner was behind me, and every time that I would feel a contraction coming on, I would sit up, and we would count through the contraction. I would do 4 breaths in and 4 breaths out for 5 breaths. And that was really helpful, because after 5 breaths, the contraction was over. And I just took it one moment, one breath at a time, and then one contraction at a time, because that's all you can do when you're kind of in it. You can only focus on one moment at a time. And that really helped me to control my mind and not get too far ahead of myself, thinking about, how am I going to cope in transition. I was like, I need to just cope with what's right in front of me, and one moment at a time, one breath at a time. And so when I was offered fentanyl, I stayed on my birth ball. I would sit up during a contraction. We would count in for 4, out for 4 for 5 breaths. And then when the contraction was over, I would relax onto my partner and rest for the time in between contractions. And then I would sit up and when the next one would come. And that was able to get me just a little bit of rest that I needed to be able to go through the rest of labor. And after I think it was about midnight at this point, I did request a check. I was ready to kind of evaluate how far we were. And it was really encouraging, because my birth team was just telling me how well I was breathing and how well I was coping. And when they came in and I had requested a check, I was at 8 centimeters dilated. And so I, at that point, was entering into transition and into the final stretch. And I had done my research on the stages of labor. And so I knew that this was the hardest part, but I knew that it was the finish line. And it was really encouraging to me when they were like, you're dilated to an 8, because they said, you're going to do this. You're going to have this baby without an epidural. And it's funny because, that was super encouraging to me in the moment. And as we reflect back, my husband is like, they were kind of saying that too, because you had no other choice. at that point. But for me, I felt super encouraged by that they believed in me and that they, told me that I was, that I could do this. And so that was just a funny thing that shares a little bit about where I was at and then where he was at. But when I was at an 8, that's when we transitioned into the shower. So one of the things that I had communicated with my doula and with my husband was that I really just wanted a toolbox of different coping strategies to pull out at different stages. And at this point, I really relied on them, and they were like, let's get in the shower to do a little bit of hydrotherapy to focus on a new environment, and the water can distract, as it hits your back. And so we took the birth ball into the shower at the hospital, and I completed transition in the shower. And this was really cool because, like I said, I knew that this was the most intense part of labor, but especially as I recall back, I was able to maintain that same peaceful environment that I wanted, and the same calm birth that I wanted, because I focused on that word that I've kind of returned to as a theme of my prep, a theme of my birth, was surrendering to birth. And it's cool because in those moments in the shower, I was breathing and I was swaying, and the way that I express it is, my husband and I both have like a background in sports. My husband played college basketball, and I was a college cheerleader. And so the way that I explain it is that, like, I was in the game. Like, at that point, I was in the game, and I had kind of found my groove and found my rhythm, and I had found what had worked for me up until that point was really relying on my breath, relying on my ball, relying on my partner, and I just stuck to it. And I was on that ball for probably 8 hours total. It didn't feel like that long to me, but I really just found rhythm through breath on the ball, and we continued to count through breaths and to breathe and to just go one moment at a time. And it was really cool because my team was letting me lead my birth. I was the one who I said, when am I supposed to push? And they're like, well, do you feel like pushing? And I said, I don't know. And my doula said, well, do you feel pressure? And I said, yeah, I feel pressure. And so they're like, okay, you can push if you feel like you're ready to push. And so we went from the shower to the bed, and they did a quick check to make sure that I was ready. I was fully dilated, and I was ready to push. And this was the most special part of my birth, because I think up until that point, I was not in control of how fast I dilated and how we were moving through. But at this point, I was in control. Pushing was something that I had control over. And I feel like I was able to really tap into my power as a woman. And I talked to myself, and I talked out loud to my baby. And through those moments, we worked together to birth my baby. And after 20 minutes of pushing, my little guy had come, and I was so empowered by I just realized how much more capable I was than I ever realized. I was so just in awe of the whole experience. And when my baby was born, I cannot even describe the feeling of like euphoria. And it really just felt like a natural high of hormones and of just joy and gratitude and empowerment of myself and of my baby. I know that we worked together throughout the whole process to have that type of birth. And those moments with my partner, those moments with my birth team were just some that I will never forget. And I was just in tears for the next hour and a half. Every picture that we have, I was crying.
Aww.
Just happy tears. And I truly, my birth team, they were my angels. I just kept telling them, I'm like, you're my angels, because they supported me, and they were there for such a life-changing moment for me. And I just felt so humbled and so grateful for such a great experience of feeling so supported and feeling so empowered.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. It was so beautiful. Do you want to share anything from postpartum?
Yeah, I feel like my birth experience really lent itself to my postpartum experience, I think, because I think every birth is such a special, unique experience. And for me, my birth helped me in every aspect of postpartum, to remember how capable I am, to remember how powerful I am as a woman. And I've always felt this connection to my baby through this whole experience. It was me and him. It was me and him through those early days of pregnancy. When I was sick, it was me and him through all of the prep and all of the work that I did before giving birth. And it was me and him through birth. And now it's me and him after. And I'm so grateful for his spirit and his light in my life. And postpartum, I think, for me, my hope is just that we as women realize how capable we are and that we're so much more powerful than I think we give ourselves credit for. And my hope is that every woman has a positive birth experience and feels empowered by all that they're capable of doing.
Yeah, well, I'm so happy that that was the case for you and loved hearing your story. If you have any resources you want to share, you can send those over and we'll put them on the show notes. And then what's the best way for people to connect with you online?
Yeah, I would love to. You can find me on Instagram at savvy_Jardine. I posted a birth vlog just for my own documentation, and I was blown away by the amount of comments and views and just messages that I got. I think that we live in a world where we need to hear the positive stories. And if there's anything that I could share, is just that I think that every woman is deserving of the birth that they want, and that they have so much more control over, to just focus on the things that they have control over, through prep, through education, and just through friends. Something that was huge for me was just really spending time with people who empowered me, people who helped me believe in myself, helped me to trust in my body. And if anything, I hope to be that for anyone who needs it, to be a cheerleader, to just talk through those fears and to be able to cheer you on so that you can just feel empowered by your birth and through your experience as a mom.
Yeah, well, we'll put your Instagram on the show notes too so people can find you. And I'm sure you'll have people reaching out. And I've seen that video on Instagram too, and it is really great. So we'll link to that too. And thank you so much, Savvy, for coming on and sharing today.
Of course. Thank you so much, Brent. It's been an honor.
All right, now I'm going to talk with Jackie from Motif Medical about their awesome wearable pump. Hi, Jackie. Thank you so much for joining me to chat about the Motif breast pump line.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm excited. We have some exciting things coming.
Awesome. Well, before we get into all of that, will you tell listeners just a little bit about you and what you do at Motif Medical?
Yes, so I am a registered nurse and board certified lactation consultant, and I have the pleasure of being the clinical lactation advisor or clinical lactation specialist with Motif, which just means I get to play around with all the fun breast pumps and tell them all the things that might make the pumps and the products better for breastfeeding families, and I absolutely love it. I also work in private practice, so I still and very much, boots on the ground, helping families in their own homes right after birth or anytime in the postpartum period and the prenatal period, just helping families be more prepared for a breastfeeding journey and all the things that they might encounter.
Very cool. Well, I was lucky enough to get to use the Luna breast pump when it was pretty new. I guess 6 years ago now. My youngest just turned 6. And I talk about all the time how it was my favorite pump of all the ones I had tried, over 3 kids and everything. And then you guys came out with the hands-free pump a couple years ago. And now there's something new on the horizon. So I want to talk about the new pump that's coming out this year.
Yes, we are very excited. Just after the first of the year, we are launching the Aura Glow, which is a new wearable pump. You might remember the Aura as our original wearable pump, and it's still available, but we've got a new player on deck that I think is going to provide a lot of really sought after features, a lot of great pump quality, and something that moms I think are going to be really excited to use on a pretty regular basis as they're going back to work or just going about their lives where they need to be hands free, need to have that wearable pump option.
Very cool. So I know you guys kind of take a lot of, I don't know, advice isn't the right word, but you take feedback. There we go. You take feedback from customers and what people are liking about pumps and things like that. So what are some of the differences with the Aura Glow that we can expect to see?
Yes, I love this question because this is why I love working with Motif, that they are so particular about taking feedback from the professional community, from the families who are using their products, and they're not just looking to pump out products that, sell. Obviously, it's a business. We need to sell things to stay in business, but the idea is to make products that actually meet needs and make pumping easier for people so that they naturally just want to buy the products, which I love that idea. And I love that we've built the Aura Glow based on feedback. So the thing I'm most excited about is the expanded flange sizing. So you get 5 flange sizes right in the box. So you get the 24 millimeter brush shield, but we also include 15 millimeter, 17 millimeter, 19 millimeter, and 21 millimeter inserts so that right out of the box, most people are going to be able to find something that allows them to pump efficiently, effectively, and comfortably. And then if those sizes don't work, the 15 through 24 that come in the box don't work, we also have even smaller sizes, 11, 12, 13, and 14 millimeter inserts available, and then a 27 millimeter brush shield available for those that might need a larger size. So excited about that. The other things that I think set this pump apart, it's a powerful wearable. So the suction is 260 to 280 mmHg. So that's millimeters of mercury. That's how we measure that suction pressure. And that puts it on par with the suction of pumps like Luna. It's still a wearable, still something that we're going to classify as a secondary pump that we would use to complement the Luna, but it's powerful. And it has 2 pre-programmed pumping modes, which are just, I think, something that's going to make life so much easier and take a lot of the guesswork out of, what settings do I use? How do I set my pump to get the most out of it?
Yeah, the different sizing is huge. I know I tried a wearable pump with my last baby, and it was, it was very early on in the making of these, but that did not work for me and was not comfortable. So having those different sizes is amazing. And do you guys provide some kind of guidance in, the packaging, or can people reach out to help find the right size?
We do provide guidance in the packaging. That's all been updated to match the most current information we have about flange sizing. So, as I said, Motif is huge on listening to that feedback, and lactation consultants have been screaming about flange sizing for a while now, and Motif definitely has listened by including those smaller sizes and that flange sizing guidance that does fit the most current information that we have about getting the right size.
Amazing. So you also mentioned the programming modes for pumping. Can you explain a little bit about those and what's different with the Aura Glow?
Yes. So I think this is revolutionary. I love this idea. There are 2 pre-programmed pumping sessions. There is the cluster feeding mode and the general pumping mode. And you can still use the pump, just as you normally would use a breast pump. But the cluster feeding mode has these 5 levels of pumping and then pause, pumping and pause to mimic how a baby cluster feeds. So that can help increase milk supply. And without the need to do this like big, long power pumping, hour-long power pumping session. It's this 30-minute pre-programmed session that your pump will move through all by itself. And then the general pumping mode is just a way to maximize your pumping efforts a little bit by triggering a couple of letdowns. So it goes through massage mode and it stays there for 2 minutes to help trigger that letdown. Then it goes to expression mode and you get that, longer, more rhythmic kind of mimicking how the baby suckles once your milk has let down. And then it will go back to the massage mode automatically to trigger that second letdown and then go back to expression. So it repeats the massage, expression, without you even having to think about it. And that way you can get a little bit more out of the time you're spending pumping.
Yeah, that's amazing. I don't think I've heard of that before on a pump. And I'm just like sitting here, like picturing a nursing session with baby and like they kind of fall asleep and then they're like, oh, wait, I want some more. And they wake up and then you have another letdown. And I could see that being something that you would really benefit from as far as milk supply with a pump that could do that as well.
Yes, exactly. Just trying to take advantage of all those hormone fluctuations and all the ways that our babies know exactly how to influence our milk supply. We're just trying to mimic that with the pump setting.
Awesome. Okay. So then you mentioned that, you do classify it as a secondary pump. What kind of guidance would you give people that are trying to decide, what pump is right for them, based on whether they're pumping full time or using it occasionally or, lifestyle, things like that? Do you, especially in your work in private practice, I'm sure you see a lot of people wondering what they should get.
Oh, yes. I get this question a lot. And the truth is, when we do anything other than traditional flanges and that high quality double electric pump, like the Motif Luna, anything that doesn't have those traditional flanges and that powerful motor is really considered a secondary pump. Now, does that mean it's not going to work or it's not going to be effective? It's not going to have its place? Of course not. We know lots of people are using wearable and portable pumps, and many of them are very successful at building and maintaining milk supply. But for most people, we want to rely on something that's a primary pump like the Luna to build and maintain a milk supply, and then use something like a wearable or portable pump, so a wearable like the Aura Glow, as that secondary option that we're using when we just can't drag out the big pump and the traditional flanges. So I have 4 kids. I could very easily see myself needing a wearable pump to be able to keep up with my other children if I were to have another baby, and that would be a perfect scenario to use this pump at those times when you just need to be hands-free. Maybe you're traveling, maybe you're at work, lots of different scenarios. And what I tell people is, if you're in a situation where you can't pull out that primary pump, then this would be a perfect option. A wearable like the Aura Glow would be a perfect option to complement for those times when you can't pull out your primary pump. And I do have lots of patients who kind of incorporate them from the beginning when they first introduce pumping. We tend to get a better result than if we only use one type of pump and then try to add another pump later. Sometimes it's about getting your body to be sort of conditioned to respond. So maybe adding in that wearable, if you're going to need it, adding it in when you first start introducing pumping into your journey.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I could see it being something that, keeps people nursing their baby just because they may not have pumped otherwise. Like you were saying, you get into a situation where you can't pull out that pump. So you just push off that pumping session, which I know I did with my second baby at work. And then my milk supply suffered. But maybe if I had had something like this, I would have been like, oh, let me just do this real quick while I finish this work or whatever. And I always tell people, block it on your calendar. Like, don't make exceptions. Don't miss a pumping session. But of course, things come up and it can be hard sometimes. So I love that there's just more options out there.
Yes, some milk removal is always better than no milk removal. So it's like, if we can only pump with the wearable, then by golly, let's get that wearable out. That's exactly what we need to do in that scenario. So yeah I love that encouragement that it might make things actually make that breastfeeding journey go a little bit further with the help of the tools that we have now.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I love, I've loved everything that Motif has come out with. So I'm so excited for this new launch and to hear everyone's feedback from it. And I really appreciate you taking time to chat with me today about the new Aura Glow.
Yes, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity.
Thank you so much again to Savvy for sharing her birth stories with us and to Motif Medical for sponsoring this episode. If you want more information from today's episode, head over to thebirthhour.com and just search for Savvy's name in the search bar to find her show notes page.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, head to thebirthhour.com and click Become a Member to pledge your support. And as a thank you, you'll get an invitation to join our private Facebook group and access to exclusive episodes. Your vote of confidence and support means the world to me.